So what was the definition, your sort of working definition?
So it goes something along the lines of this. Liberty is not a license to do whatever you want. Instead, liberty is the ability and responsibility to do what God says is right and good, and to enjoy all that God has given individuals to enjoy without oppression or tyranny, whether from individuals or governments.
Yeah.
And we have a list of scriptures that we're basing that off of from Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and Galatians chapter 5. And we're going to dig into those here now in this episode.
Yeah, so you didn't just pull that out of thin air. You have a little bit of biblical backing to go into that. That's good. It's always a good start.
Well, I mean, if we're going to accuse all those other views of not having objective truth, we might want to consider having some objective truth on our side.
Could be helpful.
Yeah. So Genesis 1, I'll let you start with that one.
Yeah, so this is Genesis 1, 26 through 28. This is like one of my favorite just like passages in the Bible, and I think like the longer I go on in my faith, the more I feel like I see how so much in the Bible leads back to Genesis and sort of predicated on this idea that is presented in Genesis chapter 1. So I'll go ahead and just get into it.
Yeah.
So Genesis 1, 26 through 28. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on earth." And I mean, so right there, it's just the idea of image.
Yeah.
Right. It says like the original call and blessing upon man.
Right.
To like reflects God's image into the world. And so how do you kind of like in your eyes, or how did that like play into your definition of liberty?
Yeah. So that for me, there's the concept of dominion, right? So in English, our word for dominion means sovereignty. And that's the word that was translated when they translated from Hebrew, because this is the Hebrew part of the Bible, into English. You know, they use dominion and that idea of sovereignty, right? It's not like a complete and total sovereignty without God, but a sovereignty and dominion over the earth that God has given to individuals here in this passage, that is under God's authority.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have this stewardship from him. He's I don't want to say least, but he's given us a stewardship over his creation and told us, you go represent me. That's to be an image bearer to the rest of creation. Right. And so as we know in Genesis 3, the fall happens, but this command to take dominion didn't go away with the fall.
Yeah.
It's still part of our mandate from God. And I think some might disagree with that, but I think I forget the psalm, but there's a psalm that brings up the exact same thing, that God has given dominion to us.
Yep.
And so it's even after the fall, we see that that's there.
So yeah, I heard someone say one time that like, you know, it's not like after the fall, you know, there are verses where, you know, it shows God's kind of anger or like, you know, his wrath on human beings after the fall. But,
the flood.
You know, someone said one time, like, he didn't go back through and look at all the things he created and then decide that it wasn't good. You know, it was like he still originally said that it was good, and he was like, this is your purpose. Like, he gave it to them, and he doesn't like go back on that word. So
yeah, the purpose of mankind to glorify God, and this is part of, and I say part because there's so many more facets. I don't know how to say that.
Facets.
There you go. Thank you.
Faucets is the thing that water comes out of.
Hey, it's a channel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. See where my mind went there? Anyways, the whole idea here, that God has given us this mandate to take dominion. And when we do it, it glorifies him.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, apart from Christ, it's a mess. But tying this back to liberty, it's part of that doing all that God says. It's the responsibility to take dominion and be a good steward of it, and the ability to do it. Right?
Sure.
So if this is to individuals that God has given dominion to, not kings like they used to think with the absolute rule of kings, but to individuals, then I have dominion over the sphere that God has given me dominion over, right? The property I own, the family I have, the community I'm in. I have responsibilities to protect, to be a good steward there. Well, in that sense, I have liberty there. I have liberty to act in accordance with what God has given me dominion over without interference from anybody else, without my consent, or it's oppression, it's tyranny if they do it without my consent. So that's the whole concept of liberty is tied up. If you're given dominion, but you don't have the liberty to function in that, then it's not a real dominion.
Not actual dominion, not actual liberty.
Right.
For sure. Cool. So what's the next verse that we have?
Yeah, so this is Genesis 2:16 through 17, and the one you read I think was the ESV, but I pulled up the KJV. In KJV.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, now I can't read KJV.
No, I
don't speak that language.
The English is unfortunately gone. It's a beautiful language, but not. I get too distracted when I try to read it.
Yeah.
So Genesis 2:16 through 17 says, "And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die." And so you see here where God is giving mankind this freedom of choice. He didn't tell him, I want you to come to me and ask me every time you want to eat something, which tree to eat. He's like, no, go out there, go enjoy, go eat the trees, go work the garden.
Yeah.
You may freely eat. But he put a limit on, except this one. And God is in that, in a way, obviously giving him the freedom asserts his authority, but also he's asserting his authorities to say of everything but this one.
Yeah.
Like, so he's putting a limit, like everything's good, just don't cross this line.
Yeah.
And so that just ties back into the definition that we have here of we're in accordance with, it's not a license to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But it's limited by what God says is right and good, and then what God gives us to enjoy. Right?
Sure.
So I think that's what we see there in Genesis 2:16 through 17.
Yeah,
it's just that principle of liberty and freedom coming right from the beginning.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. It literally even uses the word, you may freely eat.
Yeah. That's why I like the New King James Version. They translate it freely, which you can, there's when you translate words differently in the different translations, they're just, it's not that word doesn't have the meaning freely in it. It's just they choose to.
Right. It might be a synonym or whatever word they felt was a little bit better. So, yeah.